Listen, this message is from the future. Okay, I just finished recording the entire video. Right. Well, it's like raw footage. I have to clip it all up. It'll probably be like 8 to 10 minutes when it's all said and done. But here's the thing that I need you all to keep in mind: that the title wasn't meant to be a clickbait. When I discovered this route, I truly believed that it was not my route, that I did not create it. I believed that my friend Mashi, who is not a tank, in fact, he's barely even a rep player. He PvPs like fucking weirdo. Who even does that toxic ass shit? You know what I mean? Like, I truly thought that he accidentally created this route. I believed that. Turns out when I was trying to pull the footage for this video, this motherfucker led me to believe that he created it. It was me. I told him to kill it. I had a stroke of genius in the middle of a key that I wasn't tanking, and then I was the one that did it, not him. So anyways, I mean, most people call me a noob tank anyway, so I guess the title's not really that clickbait, but there's a difference between a guy who's tanked like 20 keys and a guy who's tanked like 3,000 keys. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, enjoy the video. Okay, team, today the goal of this video is to go over a Plaguefall route that my friend accidentally made that is super overpowered. Now, as it turns out, right after my friend Mashi accidentally made this route, somebody mentioned, hey, they use this route in the MDI, and they actually got the fastest time with it. Now, when I create a Plaguefall route and I'm balancing all the many factors that go into this thing, I have some general guidelines. The most important is that we have lust up for the 4th boss. What that usually means is that the 3rd boss is excluded from having a lust on it. So where I try to place the remaining lust is that on the 1st boss, there's some hard DPS checks, because the more big slimes that you have, the more CCs you need in order to take care of them. And what that leaves you with is that maybe you can get a lust in on the 2nd boss on one of the platforms. However, the one negative about this route, I will admit right from the start, is that you probably won't get a lust on the 2nd boss. Now, one of the second principles I always have is that I always want my red slimes in when I can get them. Now, the easiest way to use the red slime is to use this red slime here on the 1st boss, and then this red slime here on the 2nd boss. Sorry, I accidentally unclicked that. And then if you're willing to take the time to drag this red slime all the way to this boss, it can actually be a huge improvement. The more infectious rain casts you can skip, the more likely it is that your healer will be successful in getting you through the final boss. So I really think it's a great idea to have this red slime here. How much time it saves you overall on the actual dungeon, I think might be negligible, but pushing the face just a little bit can change the healing profile completely on this fight. The main idea of this route is to use this woe buff right here. I'm going to annotate this with a yellow marker. This woe right here is what we're going to use to skip all the way to this mini boss right here. Now, there's a few ways this is not the actual route that you're taking with your body. It's just to make it very clear so you can see the line. You're going to use the woe buff to skip to this guy here. But in order to skip these tentacles and these groups right here, which can all be very time consuming and incredibly dangerous, what we need to do is pick up some trash on the front end. Now, a lot of people have a lot of problems with this trash on the front end of the dungeon. So we're specifically going to use a lot of our time talking about the trash here and what they do and their abilities, so that you have a better understanding of what's going to happen in order to pick up the percent that you need. Now, the reality is that the time you spent here is very comparable to the time you would have spent here. The reality is the time you spent here is very comparable to the time that you spent here. The big difference in these pulls is actually these tentacles and getting to this boss with your plague borers still intact. I think that right now, as we're currently using them, we use sets 1 through 3, and our 4th set completely goes by the wayside. I think there's a way to actually get both of these sets into this to use as plague borers, and you'll save an additional 20 to 30 seconds here on your overall dungeon time, maybe even up to a minute, but this does take quite a bit of coordination. I have yet to attempt to do this with my group. Let's jump into some actual video gameplay footage and show you the mechanics that you need to know to be successful at the mushroom portion of this dungeon. Okay, fam, we're going to try something new today. We're basically going to do a walkthrough with a pen app that I downloaded to try to show you guys what it is that we are looking at. Let me know in the comment section how it comes out for you, whether you like it like this or you'd prefer that I go back to some of the other things that I've tried in the past. with my route, the first thing that's super important to note is this Decaying Flesh Giant. Now, he has a path that goes from somewhere over here on the left all the way around to a pack that's right here. This is the third pack on the right. But once I engage this set of mobs here, this pat is going to come in. Now, this is super important because the Decaying Flesh Giant does two things. He has a cast called the Creepy Crawlers, which needs to be kicked, and it's on roughly a 15 to 20 second timer, which means you need somebody, usually a melee, to kick it to keep it from spawning 3 little adds. These little adds add quite a bit of damage to the pull. Now, the other important thing to note here is the Fungalmancer. It's going to cast Wonder Grow twice in under 15 seconds. So you need to dedicate 2 melee kicks to the Fungalmancer. Now, the other thing to note is that the Fungi Stormer is going to cast Fungi Storm roughly once every sub 16 seconds. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this is once every sub 16 seconds because DR lasts exactly 16 seconds and is refreshed every time you use ability from the same class. So if you commit 2 stuns to it, by the time you get to your third stun, you get a 1 second stun, and or it is simply an interrupt, and then the mob goes right back to doing his normal rotation. So what you actually want to do is, instead of a 2 stun rotation, is you want to go 1 stun into a CC ability. Now, for me, my best ability here is a Imprison. So if you use Imprison, so I stun, well, for me, it's Fear, but let's say we use the Demon Hunter AoE stun here. First, we can go stun, CC with Imprison, and then we can go another stun if we had one, which we don't. And then you go into another CC. What this does is it keeps us from ever getting into the DR portion of the stuns, and keeps it so that, for example, let's say we were going to use Fears because me and the priest both have Fears. If we make sure we only use our Fears here or here in this section and then disperse it out once every other, we don't run the risk of the Fear not working, so that we can stop the Fungi Storm. Fungi Storm on every week is important, regardless of whether it's fortified or tyrannical, but its deadliness increases drastically as the key goes up, and even more so on weeks like bolstering or raging, where you can end up with an empowered or strengthened Fungi Storm. They can do quite a bit of damage. Now, tanks, don't forget, the Mire Soldier here does heavy swing. This generally needs to have a defensive, otherwise you run the risk of accidentally getting clapped. This will do, and mitigated, this will probably do like 15 to 25% of your health. Unmitigated, you're looking at 50% health, plus a couple melees from these guys, and you're going to get smoked. So keep that in mind. Now, I don't think pulling these together on a fortified week is particularly smart. Okay? In fact, I have warned my friend against doing it, Panda, who is a newer tank in the game. And so I highly recommend that you just wait for the Decaying Flesh Giant to get to roughly this spot here. You can use something like Sigil of Flame or any ability that doesn't jump. So I wouldn't recommend using your Throw Glaive or your Throw Hammer. But like, you know, regular throws, regular taunts, things like that will easily get the Decaying Flesh Giant over here. Once he gets to roughly this spot on the ground, somewhere in this section, so that way you don't pull. There's like a pack of adds over here. You don't want to accidentally pull them while you're pulling the Decaying Flesh Giant. All right, so on this particular run, and I don't have a video showing you where I pull the Decaying Flesh Giant separate, on this particular pull, I decide just to go straight in to the 3-pack here and let the Decaying Flesh Giant come in. Actually, I go even crazier than that, and I grab an even bigger set with the second pull, and I think I call for a Lust. I actually think this is a great strategy and a great idea. However, at this key level, at a 17, what I'm going to run into is that I'm not going to have Lust for the first boss. But I actually think this is a great strategy. You have a 38-minute timer, which means you're only going to get so many lesson. And also, I pull a lot of trash at the beginning here. I get to close to 44% before I pull the first boss. So I actually think that in keys like 20 plus, maybe even 21, 22 plus, that this is a great strategy on a fortified week to double pull this and then let this ad come in. Now, it's important to note that I kept, like I said, this is a 2-kick rotation. This is a 1-kick rotation. So now we're at 2 plus 1. That's 3 kicks. When you add this pack in, this Pestilent Harvester casts an ability called Hurl Spores. Now, Hurl Spores can be very, very deadly for a tank. It's a disease, so it can be dispelled by priests, paladins, monks, question mark, and your file, which I didn't bother to cast. So it's important to keep in mind that not only does hurl spores do a ton of damage, it also slows you by like 50 or 60% or something like that. So it makes it very hard to start kiting away in a situation where it's super dangerous. Now, if you notice here, there's some fungi storms going off. These first sets of fungi storms that are being casted actually don't do any damage. So do not waste a stun or an interrupt on these fungi storms that are being casted as you pull the pack. They don't actually do anything. So save it for the next set of fungi storms. Super important to keep in mind so that you don't run into that DR issue I was talking about or run out of CC abilities for them in general. So I double pull these, which I think is a little psychotic, but I do think that this can be a valuable strategy in people that are able to execute this pull. Like I said, we're somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 melee kicks if you were to do all the things to be successful in this pull. So finally, the guy pulls in, and right off the rip, we actually miss the Wonder Grow cast. So keep that in mind that when you're a tank, knowing who your classes are and what it is that they do, and what their strengths and weaknesses are is super important. So if you're going to do this pull and then miss your Wonder Grow kick, keep in mind that you can't just call on the mage to solve that problem for you. You need to also manage it yourself and think about how your group can manage it if you make a mistake like this. After we're finishing the first pull, that's this pack here is the third is your next pull, and then this pack here in the back is your follow-up pull. So the next pull that I recommend for most groups is going to be this big slime pull. Now it's necrotic week, so I get myself murked here, as is appropriate for somebody who thinks they're too cool for school. I'm going to pop sheet death here in a second when this like final tick hits me. Oh, there it is. Yep. Then we're going to move into the next pull. We're going to take this Plague Belcher here. From here, we're going to go down this hill and we're going to pick up our first red slime. Now, one of the things I want to talk about in this section is actually these plague borers right here. Now, these plague borers normally start here, and I pull them into this unstable canister here with the 3 rotting slime claws that were right nearby and this blighted spine breaker, which pats from here to here. All right, so I pull these all on top of this canister here because I think it's a really, really efficient pull. Now, as a tank, what you need to be aware of is that this pull is insanely dangerous. All right, so what you need to do is make sure that you have multiple defensives available to you so that you don't die in this situation here. Now, this is important. Wretched Phlegm here is actually an insanely dangerous spell, and I never get any help on this. Now, I myself should have been planning for this and use probably my Imprison to stop one or my Fear to stop both. And I'm going to dip. Yeah, there you go. That was the both Wretched Phlegms. Took me to about 66% health there. And that was with shields already attached to me. So DPS, keep in mind that it really helps out if you end that Wretched Phlegm cast from the Plague Borer. It's going to save your tank a lot of damage, and it'll potentially prevent a wipe and or take death. We're going to take this slime all the way up to Groblock, the first boss. So we start doing a kick rotation on the mob. I use my Sigil of Silence to get it over here. What we want to do with this first slime is we're actually going to place it right here on this panel. I like having it right here at this little intersection. So what this does is it creates spots where my people that are going to CC big ads are easily located, right? They can easily find it, and their downtime is very, very minimal on the boss so that we can maximize the use of this buff overall. This is that final pull. This is the one that we learned about that we're going to use to skip everything. So I like to do it in this order. My friend Panda likes to do this pack first, the one that we're currently pulling. He likes to do this pack first, and then that one that was around the bend over here, he actually uses that wall to do this skip. So we finish our woe here, and then we're going to make sure we don't have Immolation Aura on so that we don't accidentally pull mobs. And then you can just run through all of this. You're allowed to touch this green stuff here. So you'll see I just run straight through it here. Now, the one little cheeky thing I do is this guy, I can't do anything without pulling, but that guy, I hit an Immolation Aura right at the end so that I'm able to pick him up and pull him in first. And then I'll do the same thing with this guy. I target him, and I'm going to use Consume Magic to pull him in. That way my glaive doesn't accidentally bounce to anything or nothing weird happens. I wait till he gets all the way in. Actually, what I used was Sigil of Flame there. Then I get both of these Plague Borers on top of Verlex Blight Weaver here, which is super, super efficient. And in the meantime, somebody pulled these mobs for me. You really want to get these Plague Binders in, because if you don't get aggro on them, they're going to mess up your healer or your DPS. So I have Sigil of Silence. I ended up getting both of them, so they easily pull in. Then just my regular Spirit Bomb gets aggro on everything, and we're in good shape here. All right, fam, I'm going to cut the video short here. There was another pull I wanted to go over that might save potentially a minute in the dungeon, but I think it's a very nuanced pull, and the danger of it really only starts to show itself in higher level keys. And since that doesn't apply to the majority of my community, I think we're going to skip over it for now. If you are interested in that, please send me a comment on Discord. You can find the details in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please drop it a like. If you find my content entertaining, please consider subscribing. And as always, keep on keying. Peace.